Manu! 75 million years ago, it began. Number 1. The dinosaurs, a three-dimensional mutation of life on this planet that produced consciousness. Consciousness in the form of velociraptors, who psychically were able to control all dinosaurs on the planet through. Number 2, the imps. The imps are a four-dimensional membrane of unconscious connection linking the brain cells of the dinosaurs with the collective four-dimensional planetary consciousness. So, the dinosaurs and the imps working together to manifest the first active brain of this planet. An attempt to wake up. The red eye is created. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3, the red eye opens. Satan! A velociraptor super being who, through bizarre and unknown, unguessable rituals, conjures and creates, through his mutated mega mind, a five-dimensional direction. The Tsar of all dinosaurs, Satan! He, in his twisted, insane, reptilian schemes, unleashes the red eye. It opens, but it opens onto a world of chaos. With a mad howl, he screeches, and he rends the fabric of space-time. The curtain shatters, and the Earth begins to be subjected to insane radiations from another dark dimension. The dimension of the Elder Gods, who this satanic velociraptor sorcerer worships as the true gods of the cosmic order, and he's ready to offer up this planet to them to serve their evil, hyperdimensional purposes. Ho 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 ho! So the Earth cries out, and a beam of light from the stars of Orion shines on to the planet. Bang! 65 million years ago. The impact. It took 10 million years for them to get from number 1, which was the dinosaur consciousness awakening, to the evolution of that into a brain cell that would actually have hyperdimensional, above it all, turning on the light switch of the planet's brain, super consciousness, and that is Satan. So when the shocking intervention occurs, Satan and his followers see it coming and freeze themselves at what is now the South Pole in Antarctica. It's the Satan Velociraptor and 4 of his female Velociraptors, his witches, who are the, mistresses of hell in every type of bizarre, beyond anything human, dark, dimensional orgy of chaos way. The kind of thing like in, the movie with, Sam Neill when the planets go into the chaos dimension and you see things, just to behold them is to unfold madness into your mind. These chaotic characters. Luckily only 5 of them survive in the ice, and their elder god attempt is shut down by the cosmic police force, the stars of Orion, the beings of light. So this beam of light shuts them down, and the dinosaur civilization is erased, extinct. And what begins to happen is that an arch of hyper light effects begins to radiate up from the Earth. Number 4. Imagine it like a flashlight being shined onto a bunch of primates in the Earth from this influence of this cosmic impact, like radiation. Where the impact occurred and how it radiated seems to indicate that, although one of the major force points was obviously in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, the way it was the way the smackdown occurred is that the beings of light arrived at the North Pole and then summoned in the meteor from the meteor belt to smack down on the Earth. So their arrival at the North Pole is like a beam of light from the cosmos shining down onto the humans who are the Nordic characters living in the caves and in the mountains up near the north at that time. These forefathers of the Aryans. And they are beamed and radiated with this light, and what happens is a mutation begins to occur in the primates at the top of the world who become infused with the light. And across a 64 million year timetable, these human primates of the Arctic will be transformed into the elves. And finally they arrive at number 4, the elves. It takes 64 million years for this to occur. You know, and that's a hefty number. And you have to think about the fact that the dinosaur velociraptor rips open the fabric of the curtain. And it creates a squiggle, which then is the imprint for the planetary brain from that point forward. It is the footprint. In other words, the first quiff-popping consciousness pattern for the planet as it woke up with that scream of the velociraptor was this squiggle pattern, which has since been identified as the time wave by Terence McKenna and other New Age gurus talking about the 2012 Omega Point, and how this is the key concept, that this pattern of time wave here represents consciousness as a standing wave in time. And it's the primal pattern that all of human consciousness has to react to, and it has peaks of, you could say, establishment type thinking or solidified realities, and then valleys of novelty, which is breakthrough, change, etc. So it's a red, was essentially a red-blue dynamic, okay? And what we have to look at here is that it's creating this wave which imprints and marks the whole structure of the planetary consciousness, and which radiates in certain patterns. From the point of the elves awakening at 64 million years on, post-Orion strike, that 64 number is an encompassing of that whole time wave. The velociraptor makes the impression, rips it open at the beginning, causing the 65 million year, 65 million year marker. Okay, that's when the asteroid intervention, impact, destruction. Because we know it's not just the asteroid. All dinosaur life on Earth was irradiated in a strange way and just died off. And it's the elves and the light cleaning process. So then that leaves behind now at their elven landing spot this contamination of the primates, because these Orion figures are beings of light. They're not even humanoid in any way, of course. They are beings of pure light. So their interaction with the planet is a completely alien phenomenon to the planet. Therefore, it takes 64 million years for this alien cosmic intelligence to effectively incarnate within and become conscious within human or humanoid material. What is now primate material. It's not human yet. I'm going to just explain that in a minute. But it's primates, animal primates who are mutated over a 64 million year period. Finally, 1 million years ago, they light up, okay? And now you have to look at the fact that the eye, the red eye that opened, okay, that is Satan's eye, the eye of Sauron, the Mordor eye, that opened and then was smacked down, cut off by the Orion beings of light, like an angel with a sword. Boom, cut off, thrown down into the unconscious. That's Satan being frozen at the South Pole. And then you see now, with the Orion intervention, the white eye is grown. And it takes 64 million years to grow the white eye. Okay? And that white eye finally opens with the elves. And this is the all-seeing eye, that's the good white light, that is the representation of the cosmic energy that was first beamed to the planet to eliminate the dinosaur elder god threat. And then grew and integrated with our planet over a 64 million year period. Then, once it becomes conscious, you see, it produces a four-dimensional reflection of that light, which is the fairies, number 5, okay? As the imps were to the dinosaurs, so the fairies are to the elves, okay? So now the elves that grow are not indigenous to this world. They are not part of this world. They are a aborted mixture of universal consciousness with local matter. And so the characters that are created by this process, the elves, they are very distant from the concerns of the earth. They're in their perfect palaces of light and crystal, and they are unable to relate to the earth. So the fairies, which are created by their turning on the white eye, the fairies are, you see, if you look at the Egyptian eye with the all-seeing eye, and then the strings going down, and the strings going down are like within the Freemasonry compass, or represent the rays that form the staircase that the pyramid is rebuilding, etc. But those strings, that connection between the fourth dimension and the world of the three dimension at the bottom, that is this level of the imps. The dinosaurs had red strings coming down from the red eye, you see. That's what the imps were. And so the dinosaurs at the bottom level with their triangle, reaching up and becoming conscious, create the red strings of the imps that finally converge and turn on the red eye at that point, and that's the Satan, okay? Now, the white eye is turned on by the elves who are at the bottom, just like the dinosaurs were. The fairy light is generated as a result, but the elves cannot relate to the fairies because they're too pompously above it all regarding the earth. They look down on the fairies as just pale imitations of them. They're not as good as us. They're just our excrement in a way. And they turn their back on the human concern, so they're not able to create the blue pentagon, which would be the Christ. The Christ, the light of the white eye finally turned on. It's not. So what happens is the eye goes to sleep. The elves kind of sing it to sleep with their beautiful, brilliant irrelevancy and their lovely harmonic tone. In the valley, ha ha. And that's it. The eye takes about 500,000 years of that, and then it kind of falls asleep. Wouldn't you? And it's a failure for the planet. But the elves are perfect, and there's nothing wrong with them, technically, so they end up just kind of hanging around in the north in their crystal irrelevancy, while the earth tries to come up with another plan. And that second plan finally manifests with the humans, okay? Which are using the intervention of a loop. The reason that this is a circle is because the earth realizes that it has to use a non-linear approach in forming its next brain. Because the elves got caught in a long linear cycle that ended with a final product that had contempt for the whole process. So they have to use a baffle me now and empower me later strategy with the humans by injecting a four-dimensional scheme. So the goddess's plan, the brain's plan, is to use a circle as the basis for the human consciousness. A circle. And so it's a cycle. And so what's the natural default choice here? It's the zodiacal cycle of 26,000 years, which is the circle that you see every day as well as every year. And it's the idea that the humans are going to be conditioned with a four-dimensional consciousness that's going to grow within a cycle to the point where by the end of a 26,000-year loop, the humans will have become the hyper-gods and will, with the help of the Sirius beings, who... Now, here's another thing we have to remember. The humans, as we are going to understand them, begin with Adam and Eve, but they're green, i.e. they're what's going to become the Atlanteans or the First Age humans. So I'm referring to them as the humans in the sense that, yes, they, at the beginning, are identical to you and me, essentially, but they are growing up in an environment, the perfect Garden of Eden environment, which is about this contact level. Because at the beginning of the cycle, 26,000 years ago, at the Genesis point, the space gods, who are humans from the end of the cycle, 26,000 years from now, there are two zodiac cycles implied, the infinity loop, you see, of the serpents eating a tail, but it's the infinity loop of the 8, not just the circle. So the first loop which we've explained before how the humans who are from the next Aquarius will become the space gods, hyperdimensional gods, with the help of the Sirius aliens, who the Earth brings in as a kind of outside contractor. Once the Orion-Elven thing occurs, the Sirius beings become interested in the Earth because the Sirians are five-dimensional beings by default. So once I think that the Sirius beings, because they are not the pure beings of light, it's obvious that the pure beings of light, the Orion characters, rule the galaxy at some galactic level. And the Sirius beings are like us, on a level below this hierarchy, and they grew to five-dimensional. They survived their apocalypse. They had a wonderful, happy time. And they were originally beings of, whatever type of, existence alien to us. But once they evolved into a five-dimensional being, they evolve into a life form similar to what we will evolve into when we become five-dimensional beings, you see. So the Sirius aliens can't relate to humans as primates, but once humans become four-dimensional, five-dimensional, once they begin to get that pentagon level, that's when they're hyperhumans, the Sirius beings are helping us. So we, at the apocalypse point at the center of the two circles of this infinity loop, that's when we are going to become hyperhuman for the first time. That's where the story ends, with us at the hyperhuman level. From that point on, we're able to relate to the Sirius aliens, which is why the Sirius aliens only appear to come out behind the curtain and contact us 2010, 2012, because we're actually now at the point where we're going to be on the level with them. And you see then from this loop now, beginning with this new alpha point, 26,000 years into the future to the next omega point, when we are the space gods, we will be totally on the level with the Sirius beings, and they will help us travel back in time through the apocalyptic now of our omega alpha point, back to the beginning 26,000 years ago, and be the creator Elohim space gods who start everything at this point here, Adam and Eve, 26,000 years ago. So what we're talking about, and this is a very interesting, ambiguous point, is that there are two zodiacal cycles, right, which run concurrently, and there's a focal point in the middle that's the most important part of both of them. And that the apocalyptic events we're living through now, and the omega point we're living through now, are going to determine the past then, because of the space gods, which will be coming when. And the when is defined by our definition of who they are, which is who they were, which is why we have to have understanding of the whole cycle as it's ending now. So it's the idea of whatever script we hand to them when they pass through us is the first moment that humans, from a linear point of view, become truly hyperdimensional. When we become hyperdimensional, we open up the quiff of all possible futures, including the one where we, as giant space gods, come back to us in the now. So, since that's the decreed plan given to us by the dwarves, who are created at this Adam and Eve point from pygmy human primates, okay? The dwarves are evolved as a let's say, agency who are going to build up, because the space gods, us at this hyper level, we're like ready to step off into the cosmos, as I've described before, in terms of the big space god plot and how it's about to fly by. And this isn't about the details of that zodiacal conspiracy now, but we have that on other videos, and we know it's well known, about how the space gods are us at that hyper level, where this whole process of, 52,000 years, which is what it takes the human process to become hyperdimensional. This entire result of this event is for us to finally, as space gods, step out of our solar system to a cosmic level. That's what the planet's whole purpose in being is. The purpose of the planet's existence is to step out to a cosmic level. The dinosaurs didn't do it. They wanted to serve us up at a cosmic level. The elves didn't do it. They just wanted us to worship the cosmic level. So finally, the humans are going to be a complex system that the Earth is gambling will finally pay off into brain cell mega gods who are going to represent Earth at that cosmic level. And the Sirius beings are contracted to help us do this. So the Sirius beings manipulate the short human primates into the dwarves. They're like the other gods who are brought in to shine their light, their weird five-dimensional light, on human primates. This is the secret origin of the dwarves that has never been revealed by anyone, ever. You're hearing it for the first time at this moment. as it's born. But this goes back actually to secret conversations I had with the ghost of Balin, quote unquote, the dead lord in the dwarf land of the dead. It's ruled by their Osiris, who is Balin from the Tolkien mythos. When they go into Moria in Lord of the Rings, they find the tomb of the king. That's Balin's tomb. And supposedly it's a real dwarf king who's part of the dwarf roll, which is this list of dwarf characters that was handed to these Vikings around the time of the Kalevala and these oral histories that Tolkien used for his basis of the whole dwarf mythology. But in any event, what we know is that the dwarves were Eskimo-type pygmies that are humanoid who live in the north and were cohabitating with the beautiful blonde Aryan humans who became the elves. The dwarves are the other Arctic dwellers, okay, who are mutated by the Sirius beings at the Earth's request, and they become, that's the beginning of the dwarf thing. You see, the dwarf experiment goes very well because they're kept underground, etc., etc. And their whole purpose is to assist the space gods 26,000 years ago at this Adam and Eve level with constructing the Garden of Eden, constructing the human societal framework according to the master plan, which we are deciding now. 26,000 years ago, during this Adam and Eve number 6, dwarves are busily working, constructing everything that's going to be the human story building up to the Atlantis point, which will be the first launching of the human civilization, as we'll get to. But they're using a master plan handed to them by the space god giants who have just arrived. Alright? And that plan the space gods got from us 4 years from now, when they pass by on the Omega point, and we slip the Mandela into the singularity, and that's the Mandela that determines the 26,000-year loop now ending at the moment that we slip the Mandela in there. Okay? From that moment on, alright, we determine, this is what Colonel Burr was ranting about on the night you and I first discussed this on the phone. You had said it's good because we don't have to suck anybody's dick. If we're handing them the plan, right, we're in charge because we're the ones alive now. Even the Founding Fathers, right? And that's when the ghost of Burr at that moment in the alcove popped up and, ha ha ha, yes, they have to pass through our revolutionary work. The space gods, right? So Burr, who's the blue cosmic guy for the Founding Fathers A-Team, he is the one who is in charge of the cosmic contact plot, which the Native Americans have all along because of a, dwarf connection, by the numbers, etc. So the point is that they are going to be, the dwarves are going to be working exactly like as shown in the movie Time Bandits. With the, we were in charge of trees and shrubbery, right? And somebody else was in charge of building, the stones. Another person gave them, the direction of the rivers, and they're setting up the set in terms of the Matrix. They're the guys who are the workers putting together the, when you have these moments as we have had where you break through as a hyperhuman and you look to the side in the periphery, you can see the set being organized, and that's the level that the dwarves are operating at behind the curtain, of course. And we'll get to the whole Wizard of Oz behind the curtain thing when we're talking about the grid. But now, the point is, Adam and Eve represent the first humans who are on the scene, okay? And it's Adam and Eve, but first, you see, was Adam and Lilith, all right? Lilith was the first human female created alongside Adam in the space god, dwarf-run Garden of Eden, okay? And Lilith walked away from Adam, gave him the fuck you, left the garden, okay? So obviously there's something wrong there. And they realized, the space gods realized, we need the elves. We need them to instruct the human. The dwarves the dwarves refuse to instruct the humans on moral codes, sexual issues, how to view the world, etc. The dwarves want nothing. Here, I'm building your fucking mountain and I'm out of here, okay? So I'm setting up the trees, I'm setting up the plant and the animal life for you. I am not the person you asked for the Ten Commandments. And so, the space gods can't do it. They are on their cosmic prep launch, right? They're going to leave soon. They leave by the time that number 3 on the big zodiac clock has elapsed, 19,000 years ago. They're ready to leave, and the elves are brought in. They say, please help us anyway. Adam and Eve need to happen. So Adam and Lilith, you see, is the period when they first created, and Lilith, the first woman, first empowered, cosmically aware woman walks away from it, right? And so they realize they can't do it that way. They need these people to be trained, okay? These women are going to ruin the whole thing. This patriarchal plan needs to be put in place. So they bring in now the Grey Elves, okay? Samyaza is the character. Now, all along, the elves have been hanging around watching this whole process build up, and until Lilith walks out of the Garden of Eden, the elves are still not part of the game. They're very resentful of it, and they're very contemptuous about it. We're above it all. We're just waiting to be free of this planet, okay? The elves see themselves as trapped here in a very arrogant way. In other words, until they produce the Christ, until the Christ is produced, they're on the hook, all right? So basically what happens is that the high elves, who we can equate with the Archangel Michael and these big, the leaders of the elves, okay? That foppish guy who's married to Galadriel in the Tolkien view, okay? These are the leaders, and these high elves, anyway, are in charge of, they're called in, basically, by the space god dwarf council. Fix the problem with the humans. So they fix it by giving them a very specific, contained plot level about the light, the good, and Eve is brought in to supplant this. So the Grey Elves, anyway, are those elves who were sent in on this mission, because the real high elves can't be bothered. So the Grey Elves, they're grey because they go from the light to the shady world of the humans. And Samyaza and the boys are in charge of this, and what happens is it works, okay? What happens is, the tutelage of the Grey Elves at the human level produces the Atlanteans, number 8. Alright? And it's all good. The Atlanteans are basically human imitations of elves. That's why they have the arch, just like the elves do, right? The arch, by the way, is because the elves are still two-dimensional. In other words, this bottom level of our world that the shape is on, they create an archway, and their world of lovely light is through the archway. And they'll beam their light down here, but they're too condescending to actually ever show. That's why it takes 64 million years for them to even show up in minimal physicality by mutating some primates. Elves, in reality, being beings of light, don't want to limit themselves to a three-dimensional form that's a meat dying in time. So they are behind the door of light. That's why they're on the archway. So the Atlanteans are humans who set up their own doors, and they set up essentially a buffer. The Garden of Eden, you could say, is a buffer between the high, beautiful, perfect humans and the other humans, right? So as the high elves are to humanity, the Atlanteans become to humanity, right? So there's a whole, pompous of the lightness to the Atlantean civilization, which works well enough because what happens? The gnomes, of course, are created. The gnomes are the human four-dimensional connection to the planetary consciousness, which begins to create the feedback that all along they've been looking for, right? Now, what happens is, through the Grey Elves being on the scene with the humans, they're watching the humans at the bottom create their strings, green strings now, right? The dinosaurs that created the red strings to turn on the red eye, but that got cut and thrown down, right? The elves created the fairy strings, the blue strings, but they never coalesced at the top. Why? Because the elves didn't understand how the bottom level that they were forced to dwell on related to the four-dimensional level of the strings. So by watching the humans now, Atlanteans and gnomes interact, the elves understand. So, before the humans turn on their version of the eye, what happens is the elves turn on the white eye finally. The elves are able to relate to the fairies by watching the human process. The elves are able to complete their process with the fairies, and the Christ is born in Atlantis. At the high point of Atlantis, Christ, number 10, the five-dimensional expression of the blue, the light, is born. And it's born as a result of the Grey Elves who are ruling Atlantis and living with the Atlanteans in a way that's like out of the Tolkien myth of how the elves and the humans at the Atlantis level Numenor were interbreeding, and there was a whole, we're above those in the, in Middle Earth, just those other humans, right? Here we are on our lovely island, and this is the birth of a contemptuous Christ is then implicitly placed above the humans, even above a human 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional bridge. In other words, the elven light within the elves is supposed to generate the Christ, which is the planetary intelligence, the white light of the eye, being turned on, and it being in a functional way with the planet. But the elves don't want to use the eye, the white light, Christ eye. They just want to turn it on, and then they've fulfilled their part in the bargain. They're out of here. The elves leave. They go away. But they leave behind the gray elves, who then begin to, because this structure has been set up now, the gray elves who are now in charge of the Christ, since it's their 5-dimensional eye, the eye of the planet is the Christ at this point. In other words, the elves, the Samyezi and his lieutenants now, with the high elves gone, out of the picture, right? Back to Orion, finally. They're going home, finally. Homing pigeons to the Star Nebula, right? The Samyezi characters are left behind in charge, and they start to abuse the power that the Christ places over them, because the Christ, you see, is preventing the humans from evolving to a 5-dimensional level. The presence of Christ, get this, because the elves leave it behind and don't use it, and instead connect it to the gnomes at the Atlantis level because of the contract the Atlanteans made with the Grey Elves, right? Because of that contract, it's contracted to serve the light, which is the Christ. So this aborted, incorrect structure is put in place. And this creates the Atlantis problem, which then it necessitates the dwarves to come in and try to fix the problem. How do they do that? Here we go. The dwarves are number 11, not because this is when the dwarves become 5-dimensional, but because this is when the 5-dimensional dwarves have to come in and intervene in human history. Because of this distorted, aborted Christ at the top. They're supposed to be, the Atlanteans are supposed to evolve to this green hexagon level, you see. But they don't, because they got Christ's cock in their mouth. So how can they evolve to the level that Christ is at? Right? So the dwarves are at that 5-dimensional level, knocking on the door, and this creates a problem. So the dwarves say, aha, we're gonna write off the Atlantean humans, and we'll go fishing around the world to try to find other humans who we can corrupt away from the light, right? And try to get another human hexagon in action, right? So what the dwarves say to the humans is, look, we're gonna show up, they show up in the South Pacific, because it turns out the South Pacific in the dwarf world is inhabited and ruled mainly by the dwarves, like Australia, etc. And this is before the, you see, at this point, this is before the dwarves are behind the curtain. The dwarves are living, the curtain only exists to separate us from the Satan at this point, right? And the elder god Chaos. It's not separating us from the elves. The elves go away, but the Grey Elves are still walking around like you could see them on the street. So are the dwarves in that Tolkien-type level, right? And the dwarves live mainly in the South Pacific at this point because the humans have taken over with the elves out of the box in the north and the European, Egyptian colonies that are coming out of the Atlantic continent. The natural place for the dwarves to live their life is going to be on the other side of the planet in the South Pacific. So they begin to turn to the humans who are local to that, and they create what is essentially the Lemurians, number 12, which is humans who are now based on not the light, but the dark. Focused on a 3-dimensional approach, because the humans of Atlantis are so intoxicated by the light, the dwarf strategy is to make another breed of humans who are going to be focused on the dark, to try to create a yin-yang balancing effect. So guess what? It starts to work. They dig up the Satan, okay? They dig up the Satan in the South Pole, thaw him out. Lemuria and Atlantis now become equally powerful light-dark human strands, and they annihilate each other. It all goes to hell. Okay? But from a dwarf point of view, it's a success because they've successfully destroyed that structure which had been limiting the humans from growing. The green humans are now written off. Their race is dead, the Atlanteans. There's going to be a few Superman running around being the man from this point. But number 13, the humans, okay, is a stable four-dimensional square, which is what the dwarves, with the help of Samyeza's mother's plot. Now I have to back up just a little bit and recount. This is well known on other plots, other videos, but for this purpose of this video, the Samyeza connection, when the High Elves leave and they begin to interbreed with the daughters of men, as is told in the Enoch translation. They begin in this Atlantis period where the elves are living with the humans under the domain of the Christ, okay? Samyeza is the servant of the Christ in this plot level. That's Atlantean imitating elf leftover plot level. And that leads to the corruption of the daughters of men by the elf lords. And that also creates now a mother's conspiracy of these daughters of men who have given birth to the Superman, who are now going to be part of a goddess-oriented response to the patriarchal establishments of dark and light, Atlantis hierarchy, Lemurian hierarchy, who annihilate each other. Samyeza and the elves, the gray elves, play the card of an insurance card of creating a mother's conspiracy, which is going to give birth, once the light and dark Atlantis and Lemuria have eliminated each other, going to give birth to these humans at the purple level. And this is going to be the plot from the point on now, where, because of how things have now developed, we have a new Adam and Eve scenario of a cosmic seed which has 3 strands, green, blue, and red. And these 3 strands now are saying that these 3 types of strings are now reaching out from the human level to the all-seeing eye. All 3 are now at our disposal, instead of serving any one. So now we've developed the human elf, the human dwarf, the human Satan connections. And this seed now, so it's going to be humans of each particular persuasion who will be simultaneously evolving as the time wave begins to click towards its resolution. Now, all of this that we're talking about here, okay, the cycles of time that the time wave indicates, they are all converging to an end in 2012, and there are various cycles to consider. One of them starts 1 million years ago with the elves waking up, and that's the light time wave, which began when the elven activation of the eye occurred, alright? And that time wave has been running all the way to the omega point of 2012, alright? And the whole track, you see, of the the Atlantean piggybacking of an elven Atlantean plot is because this time wave was running, you see. The dark chaos time wave is the one that's been running since the billions of years dinosaur era, which corresponds to the Velociraptor scream. That's the basest level of the time wave, alright, which ends in 2012, alright? The next level starts with the elves with their breakthrough of the light. So, whereas you have hundreds of millions of years darkness, because that reptilian Velociraptor time wave goes back to the beginning of the Earth because it actually predates the Earth in terms of its wave. So the point of the Velociraptor making the scream is 65 million years ago, which represents the first sufficient peak in the first sketching of the time wave for the activation to occur, the omega point. So it's actually a dip. The first dipping, that's right, it's a dipping down into the novelty chaos, right? So, in any event, that's the first wave. Second wave is the light with the elves from 1 million years ago onward. Then the next wave doesn't occur until 4,300 years ago, which is, it's a 2 zodiac era wave. So, the human conspiracy now, in terms of how it's playing out, it becomes focused on who's going to get control of the humans by that point, right? And therefore, instantly, as soon as the cosmic seed is created, number 15 is also created. The Hoovers, which is the red seed, right? Active, and because the Satan is on the scene, you see, during this chaotic post-flood Conan period, he's able to be preemptive and take control of the humans from that point and try to create the Hoover system as the default mechanism, which will begin now with the Babylonian era and lead to the big Texas oil men of our own day. Okay? So that is a whole permutation you see on the still continuing dark time wave, which is underneath. You see? The beautiful thing about these time waves is here it is. Here it all is. You have what is the green time wave, okay? That's the 2 zodiacal age time wave, the green one, which starts at basically the climax of the age of Taurus and runs to the omega point. You have the blue time wave, which starts with the Elven Awakening and runs to the omega point. You have the red time wave, which starts with the beginning of life on Earth, peaks with the Velociraptor, and runs to the end of the time wave. Oh, at the omega point, okay? So that red wave is still occurring, so the fact that the Satan is active and on the scene with no one doing anything else for you know, millennia explains exactly why by the era of Babylon it's become the, you know, strongman, chaos, hatchet world that it is, right? And it's a Hoover love fest of hate. And who's got the big cock? And so Satan is in charge, and you see the imps. This is a thing to always remember now. The imps are still on the scene all along. The imps are the vibration of the red time wave. The fairies are the vibration of the blue time wave. The gnomes are the vibration of the green time wave. Okay? What's the purple time wave, you ask? It's the 384-day cycle, which runs out at the omega point, because it's concerned with hyper-humanity. You see? That's what time it is. The 5-dimensional pentagon shapes that I've been showing, these are concerned with the level, 5-dimensional level equals time wave level, right? And the dwarves have, by this point of what I'm talking about here, you know, around the Babylonian era, going into the beginning of the calendar of light 6,000 years ago, etc. That's when they're all prepping for control. Which of the three, since they're all running concurrently, which of the 3 colored ones, because you have that cosmic seed, so this is hot. This cosmic seed shape here, those are the 3 time waves that are running, okay? And the cosmic seed can't be fully in play until the beginning of the green time wave, which is at the climax of the age of Taurus, right? Which is explained somewhat in a different way. The mythological Mithras hero, who is killing the bull Taurus, and Mithras is going at the instruction of the planetary angels up and down the ladder to the great zodiac, okay? So we see a whole other definition to Mithraic symbolism, which, as we know, is indebtedly connected to Ion, the god of time, who has the lion head and the snakes around his body, and he represents the eternal cycle, which is ending with the roar of the Omega. And that goes back to Carl Jung, etc., etc. So my point, though, which is incredibly hot about these 3 colored time waves, is that Satan, when he begins to get control, right after the flood occurs, he begins to beef up the presence of the red time wave in the collective consciousness. Because at this point, with the cosmic seed scenario, the collective consciousness is shared by all the frequencies. So at this point, it's a battle between the red and blue frequencies, since the green is not yet on the scene, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is that red and blue imitations of humanity are going to be created, okay? But first, the Hoover move is made, because Satan is allowed to take preeminence due to the fact that the red time wave is always the strongest one, because it's the primal base level that's been going the longest. And you'll see how at the end of the cycle now, the oil of the dinosaur liquefied remains is powering the revolution of the red frequency of the time wave. The Industrial Revolution, etc., they are dark satanic mills, to use a phrase from Yeats, etc., etc. So, what happens now, in a lovely happy way, get away from those dark proclamations, is that you get 2 different wings of human elite. A wing of human elite at number 16, the Illuminati, coming out of the Babylonian kings who are creating a reptilian-oriented red time wave world. They're on the red time wave, okay? At number 3 below, okay? The star people are those humans who are serving the blue time wave, and they are number 17, so they're on top of the Illuminati, okay? The Illuminati are at the base level, which connects, as we know, to the billions, to the masses, right? The more elite level of the star people, that's the millions. That's those inside Chapel Perilous, etc. Everybody having their own star that they're following, etc. Right? And so the elves and their plots are implicitly connected to this star people agenda, which is why they're about the messages from the Space Brothers, who are now just the Atlantean survivors with a new face. The new purple face of the Atlanteans is your friendly neighborhood Space Brothers and sisters. And the new friendly purple face of the reptilians is your religious establishment, right? God Kings and later the Vatican, etc., the Illuminati, as Ike defines it, right? Okay, all this is in play now, and marching along at a splendid pace, I might add, right? So, now what begins to occur is you have a breakdown of 2 variables in the equation, which is, remember, the humans are the 4-dimensional square. So by this point, you have vast amounts of humans that are interacting with dark forces, which is a red square. It's a variable. It's not a number in the sequence. It's a variable. And light forces, which is the blue square. Okay? This whole setup is what's going into the activation, finally, of the green time wave, which occurs at the climax of the Age of Taurus. So you have these 2 foundational stones of establishments being set up for the humans, these 2 waves that are flowing in the human way, okay? And what happens now is that there's a conjunction with the dwarves, who are now with the activation of the green time wave. The dwarves are in charge of the green time wave. This is the shocking secret of the UFO that everyone's dying to know. The time wave of the green frequency begins 4,300 years ago, which is right at the climax of the Age of Taurus. And that's when the legends enter into the collective consciousness. That's the green square, you see. And these are, the legends are the entry of the dwarves and all of their kind of pranksterism, shock trooping, which is neither positive nor negative. It's just absurd. It's just bizarre, okay? And they're injecting that frequency. The time wave of the green is designed to create an alternative to the red-blue, to cultivate the humans into their own personal, unique system, okay? Now, that personal, unique system is going to be represented by the purple diamond, the homunculi, which is humans at their own destiny manipulation level. Whereas the strings of destiny coming from the eye are red imps, blue fairies, or green gnomes, okay? What some humans who are going to be on the track to hyperhumanity, what they're going to realize is that they need to create their own little person destiny scenario, which is why it begins to develop as the idea of the homunculus. Okay? Now, there's an implicit relationship between the purple time wave and the green time wave. The green time wave of the dwarves is trying to cultivate and produce the purple time wave of the hyperhumans. Okay? So that's why the dwarves in the royal courts of Europe, etc., as the green time wave begins to crunch down, we get to, I'm not going to talk about the doubling at this point. That's going to be linked in with the grid. The point is the green time wave that the dwarves are puppeteering is an attempt to engineer the purple activation for the humans, because we've got to remember the diamond level, imps, fairies, and gnomes are the red, blue, and green diamonds, you see. And that diamond shape is the vibration of the time wave, right? So, humans need to vibrate their own frequency of the time wave. And it actually takes the dwarves up to the point of me standing right here to get even close to what this purple triangle is supposed to represent. And what we're doing with our condensing of the hyperstone homunculus now with the dwarves, is manifesting at last this hyper relationship of the humans with pure purple strings. Up to this point, even to the now, I'm still relying on my green string, Huor, right? Barbara's using a blue string. You know, you're using your own green string, in my opinion. And we're all under assault with the red strings that are being thrown at us, but which we have to believe are also nudging us and directing us in a destiny way. But none of us yet really have our hands on a purple string. That's going to be when humans and dwarves have made the contact point. We're on the level. Curiously, the 384-day cycle takes us into November of 2011. And as we know, the year 2010 to 2011 is the year we make contact. So what it comes down to is that the Columbia goddess, as we're defining it in our mythos, is the homunculus. Within the time wave purple plates that we are going to be creating with our new I Ching. I haven't even mentioned that word I Ching yet, shockingly. But the I Ching, of course, is the 64 hexagram mystic oracle, which contains, in what is known as the King Wen sequence, the totality of the time wave as described here. And the McKenna material and the Wilson material talk about how this is yet another countdown to 2012 phenomenon. So, what we're saying is that the 384-day cycle is the purple frequency, which is finally the hyperhuman doorway, because following the implementation of the purple variable, you at last have hyperhumanity, which is the 5-dimensional purple shape, number 18. Okay? So there are 18 shapes and 4 variables, which makes 22. And as we know, the 22 is the pathways of the Kabbalah linking all the 7 planetary spheres, which is, if we remember, since the Jewish Kabbalah, here's the shocking secret finale about the origin of the Kabbalah. The Jewish Kabbalah is nothing more than the blueprint of the interaction of humans with the dwarves behind the scenes pulling the levers. Because the 22 levers that exist as the pathways of the Kabbalah are the 22 levers on the human tulpa machine. And we at the hyper level now finally have an understanding of all 22 levels. At shape 18, once we have activated the 384-day cycle, we will have our hand on all the levers. That's when it all hits the fan. And that's when we become judged for our efficiency by the authorities to which we have contracted our destiny, which are ourselves at that 5-dimensional level. So, we are waiting for us in 2012, at the end of the 384-day cycle, when all 4 time waves terminate. And we have to create now the encompassment of all totality of all 4 time waves converging into that final 384 cycle in our 64 I Ching new emblematic hyperplates. And with that vocabulary, we shall march confidently and fully into the cosmic void with the levers at our fingertips.